Caleb Winters tapped his foot impatiently on the polished floor of the high-tech train station. The chrome-plated walls reflected the bright, flickering lights of digital billboards that scrolled endless streams of numbers and coordinates. In his hands, he clutched a clipboard filled with scribbled notes and hastily drawn schematics of his time-travel device. His modern-day attire, a mismatched combination of a vintage leather jacket and futuristic goggles, made him stand out like a sore thumb among the early 20th century Berlin crowd milling about outside the transparent walls. Okay, first-class seat to 1914, destination, Berlin, no, wait, the 1912 assassination, no, 1913. Whatever. Just get me there. Caleb muttered to himself, glancing nervously at the departure board that seemed to change every second. His voice was a mix of frustration and desperation, the kind that only someone who's tried and failed multiple times to alter history could possess. The station master, a humanoid robot designed to resemble an antique butler with a monocle and a stern expression, observed Caleb with a mixture of curiosity and concern. "You realize, sir, that history will correct itself, yes?" the robot inquired, its voice smooth and devoid of emotion. Caleb rolled his eyes, pushing a strand of unruly hair behind his ear. Yeah, I know. But I just need to try one more time." His words were laced with both determination and an underlying hint of panic. He glanced around the station, spotting other time travelers preparing for their missions, each seemingly confident in their objectives. Before Caleb could process another thought, a shrill whistle echoed through the station. The ground seemed to vibrate as the time travel train, a sleek, silver locomotive with glowing blue accents, rumbled into view, its presence both awe-inspiring and intimidating. Without warning, the train began to speed away, the blur of its motion blending into static noise that filled Caleb's ears. He reached out instinctively, but it was too late. The train was already departing, leaving him standing alone in the bustling station. Caleb stumbled out of the time travel train, disoriented by the abrupt transition. The world around him shifted from the sterile, high-tech environment of the station to the gritty, cobblestone streets of early 20th century Berlin. The air was crisp, carrying the sounds of horse-drawn carriages clattering over the uneven roads and the chatter of men in top hats and women in long skirts. Caleb took a deep breath, trying to steady his nerves. His mission was clear: prevent the assassination of Archduke Franz Ferdinand to avert World War I. But as he looked around, he felt the weight of the enormity of his task pressing down on him. He adjusted his goggles, which were now slightly fogged from the sudden temperature change, and pulled out his clipboard. The notes were a chaotic mix of historical facts, potential intervention points, and contingency plans. Caleb was a historian at heart, his passion for the past having driven him to become a time traveler. He believed that by altering this pivotal moment, he could save millions of lives and change the course of history for the better. However, his previous attempts had always ended in failure, each change he made somehow leading to an even worse outcome. As Caleb navigated the bustling streets, he couldn't help but feel like a fish out of water. His modern attire drew curious glances from passers-by, and he had to constantly adjust his demeanor to blend in. He knew that attracting attention could jeopardize his mission, so he kept to the shadows, observing the crowd for any sign of Gavrilo Princip, the man responsible for the assassination. Hours passed as Caleb meticulously tracked Princip's movements, following leads that took him through dimly lit alleys and grandiose public squares. Finally, he found himself outside a modest cafe where Princip was rumored to frequent. Caleb took a deep breath, reminding himself of the importance of his mission. He stepped inside, the aroma of freshly brewed coffee and baked pastries enveloping him. The cafe was bustling with patrons, the air filled with the clinking of cups and the murmur of conversation. Caleb scanned the room, his eyes finally settling on a man who matched Princip's description. He was hunched over a newspaper, his expression tense and focused. Caleb approached cautiously, his heart pounding in his chest. This was it, the moment he had been preparing for. As he reached out to intervene, a sudden commotion erupted at the entrance of the cafe. A group of rowdy men burst in, causing a distraction that sent Caleb stumbling into Princip. The unintended collision was minor, but in the fragile balance of that fateful day, it was enough to set off a chain reaction. Princip, flustered by the interruption, became unsettled. His hand drifted to his coat, where a concealed weapon was tucked away. Caleb watched in horror as the seconds ticked by, realizing that his presence had inadvertently caused the assassination to occur. The Archduke would be killed, but not by Princip alone. The disruption had escalated the situation, leading to a more chaotic and uncontrolled event. As Caleb fled the scene, he couldn't help but feel a deep sense of failure. His attempt to prevent one tragedy had only set the stage for an even greater one. Days turned into weeks as Caleb observed the escalating tensions across Europe. The assassination had indeed sparked World War I, but the political landscape had shifted in unforeseen ways. Alliances were crumbling, and the machinery of war was grinding into motion at an unprecedented pace. Caleb watched helplessly as the war expanded beyond Europe, involving global powers and causing devastation on a scale he had never imagined. Determined to rectify his mistake, Caleb prepared for his second attempt. He returned to the high-tech train station, hoping to find the Temporal Protectors, an underground society of time travelers dedicated to maintaining the integrity of history. The station was quieter this time, the usual hustle subdued by the gravity of the situation. Caleb approached the robot station master once more, his frustration palpable. "I need to speak with the Temporal Protectors," Caleb demanded, his voice edged with desperation. The robot butler regarded him silently for a moment before nodding. "Very well, sir. Please proceed to the adjacent chamber." Caleb followed the instructions, entering a room that hummed with advanced technology and flickering holographic displays. Here, he met Lucia, a seasoned temporal agent with sharp features and an air of authority. Her eyes met his with a mixture of empathy and caution. "Caleb, we've been expecting you," Lucia began, her tone both stern and understanding. "Your attempts to alter the assassination have created significant temporal disturbances. The Time Correction Bureau has been monitoring your actions closely." Caleb's frustration bubbled over. "I was trying to prevent a war. Why isn't anything changing?" Lucia sighed, gesturing for him to sit. "Because every time you attempt to change a pivotal event, history adapts to compensate. It's designed to prevent large-scale alterations that could have unpredictable consequences. Your first attempt resulted in an even larger conflict, World War II, because the underlying tensions were exacerbated by your interference." Caleb leaned back, feeling a mix of anger and hopelessness. "So what am I supposed to do? Just watch history unfold as it always has?" Lucia shook her head. "Not watch, but understand. History has a way of correcting itself. Our role is to ensure that these corrections happen smoothly, minimizing the impact on the timeline. You can't force change, you can only influence it subtly." Caleb's mind raced. He had always believed that with enough effort, he could make a difference. But Lucia's words planted a seed of doubt. If history was indeed self-correcting, then his attempts were futile, mere ripples in an unchangeable sea. But what if there's a way to make a meaningful difference without causing unintended consequences? Caleb persisted, a spark of hope reigniting within him. Lucia regarded him thoughtfully. "It's not impossible, but it requires a deep understanding of the temporal fabric and the interconnectedness of events. Even then, the margin for error is minimal. Perhaps it's time to reconsider your approach." Caleb nodded slowly, realizing that his obsession had blinded him to the complexities of time itself. He had treated history like a puzzle to be solved, rather than a living, breathing entity with its own inherent logic and resilience. Over the next few weeks, Caleb immersed himself in the operations of the Temporal Protectors. He learned about the intricate mechanisms of the Time Correction Bureau and the delicate balance that maintained the integrity of history. Each mission, each attempt to alter the timeline, had to be carefully calibrated to avoid triggering catastrophic changes. Lucia became his mentor, guiding him through the nuanced art of subtle influence. Instead of direct intervention, she taught him to make small, almost imperceptible changes that could sway the course of events without causing major disruptions. Caleb began to see history not as a series of discrete events, but as a complex web of interconnected moments, each influencing the other in ways that were often invisible and unpredictable. Despite his initial reluctance, Caleb found himself adapting to this new perspective. He started to understand that his role wasn't to be a hero rewriting history, but rather a guardian ensuring that history's natural progression remained intact. It was a humbling realization, one that forced him to confront his own limitations and the futility of his previous endeavors. One evening, as Caleb and Lucia reviewed the latest reports on the evolving war, she posed a question that lingered in his mind long after their discussion ended. "Do you believe in fate, Caleb?" He pondered the question, his gaze fixed on the flickering holographic map displaying the shifting frontlines of the war. "I used to think that we could shape our own destinies, that with enough effort, we could steer the course of history. But now, I'm not so sure." Lucia nodded thoughtfully. "Fate and free will aren't mutually exclusive. Perhaps our actions are part of a larger tapestry, one that we can't fully comprehend. Our challenge is to find where we can make a difference without unraveling the fabric of time." Caleb sighed, the weight of responsibility settling heavily on his shoulders. "It's a daunting task, but maybe it's the only way to truly honor the past and protect the future." As the days turned into months, Caleb's perspective shifted. He no longer saw himself as a lone crusader against the tides of history, but as part of a collective effort to preserve the delicate balance of time. The more he learned, the more he realized that his initial obsession had been misguided. True change wasn't about forcefully altering events, but about understanding and working within the natural flow of time. One chilly autumn morning, Caleb found himself standing on a quiet street corner in Berlin, the date set to April 28, 1914, the day of Archduke Franz Ferdinand's assassination. He observed the bustling scene with a newfound sense of detachment, his previous anxiety replaced by a calm acceptance. He knew that his presence here was part of history, a subtle thread woven into the larger fabric of time. As the Archduke and his wife made their way through the streets, Caleb felt a strange sense of peace. He realized that his attempts to change the past had been unnecessary, that sometimes, the best way to influence the future was to let history take its course. He watched as the tragic event unfolded, understanding that it was an integral part of the story that had shaped the world. In that moment, Caleb embraced his role, not as a savior, but as a guardian. He stepped back, allowing the events to unfold naturally, trusting in the resilience of history to correct itself. As the sounds of the impending chaos reached his ears, he felt a sense of closure, knowing that he had finally found his place within the timeless dance of fate and free will. Caleb stood on the quiet street corner, watching the Archduke and his wife make their way through the bustling Berlin streets. The sun cast long shadows, and the air was thick with anticipation, though none could foresee the impending tragedy. He felt a profound sense of peace settle over him, a stark contrast to the turmoil that had plagued him since he first embarked on this mission. The rhythmic sounds of horse-drawn carriages and the distant chatter of pedestrians created a familiar backdrop, grounding him in the reality he had sought to change. As the procession moved forward, Caleb allowed himself to observe without interference. He noted the subtle interactions between the people around him, the way a passerby adjusted their hat nervously, the fleeting glances exchanged between street vendors, and the determined stride of the Archduke's entourage. Each detail was a testament to the intricate web of human behavior and historical inevitability that he had come to understand so well. His thoughts drifted back to his conversations with Lucia, the temporal agent who had become both mentor and confidant. She had taught him that his role was not to be a disruptor but a guardian of the timeline, ensuring that history flowed as it was meant to. Caleb had resisted this notion initially, clinging to the belief that he could single-handedly avert the horrors of war. But now, standing on the precipice of destiny, he saw the wisdom in her words. The sounds of the city seemed to fade as Caleb's focus sharpened. He could feel the weight of countless lives hinging on the events unfolding before him. The paradox of time, his attempts to change history only ensuring its course, had become painfully clear. Each intervention he had made, every calculated move, had been part of the grand design that kept history on its predetermined path. A distant scream pierced the afternoon calm, jolting Caleb back to the present moment. He turned to see a commotion unfolding a few streets away. Panic spread quickly as people began to scatter, and Caleb's instincts kicked in. He knew he had to act, but differently this time. Instead of trying to stop the assassination, he focused on mitigating the immediate chaos. Caleb moved swiftly through the crowd, his presence unnoticed by most. He approached a small group of people who seemed particularly distressed, their faces pale and eyes wide with fear. A child had fallen and scraped their knee, crying inconsolably. Without thinking, Caleb knelt beside the child, offering a comforting smile and gently applying a makeshift bandage from his pocket. The child's tears began to subside, and the parent thanked him profusely, relief evident in their voice. As he continued to help those around him, Caleb realized that his true purpose wasn't to rewrite history but to be a silent witness and a subtle helper. He could influence small moments, offering solace and support without altering the larger events. It was a humbling revelation, but one that brought him a sense of fulfillment he hadn't anticipated. Minutes turned into hours as Caleb navigated the streets, assisting wherever he could. He helped an elderly woman find her way home, provided directions to a lost tourist, and even shared a few laughs with street performers to lift the spirits of the weary crowd. Each act of kindness, though seemingly insignificant in the grand scheme of things, contributed to the resilience and unity of the community. As dusk approached, the atmosphere in Berlin shifted. The initial excitement of the day gave way to a sense of foreboding. Caleb could feel the tension mounting, the undercurrents of political unrest bubbling to the surface. He knew that the assassination would soon trigger a cascade of events leading to the Great War, a conflict that would reshape the world in unimaginable ways. Lucia's words echoed in his mind, reminding him that his actions, no matter how small, were part of the intricate tapestry of time. He began to understand that his role was not to be a hero but a facilitator, ensuring that history unfolded with minimal disruption while still allowing for moments of human connection and compassion. As night fell, Caleb found himself back at the high-tech train station, the same place where his journey had begun. The chrome-plated walls now glowed softly under the streetlights, and the digital billboards displayed a different set of numbers and coordinates. The station master robot stood silently, its expression unreadable. Caleb approached the robot, feeling a sense of completion. "I'm done," he said quietly, his voice carrying a mixture of relief and acceptance. The robot inclined its head slightly. "Understood, sir. Your mission is complete." Caleb smiled, a genuine warmth in his eyes. "Thank you. I think I've finally figured it out." As he boarded the time-travel train, Caleb took one last look at the station. He felt a profound connection to the flow of time, a realization that his place within it was not as a disruptor but as a humble participant. The train began to move, the familiar rush of motion enveloping him as he prepared to return to his own time. The journey back was swift, the familiar sights of his futuristic station replacing the historical setting of Berlin. Caleb disembarked, feeling a sense of closure he hadn't known was possible. He returned to his life as a historian, but with a newfound perspective that transcended his previous understanding of time and fate. In the weeks that followed, Caleb dedicated himself to sharing his experiences, not through grand theories or speculative fiction, but through small, impactful actions. He volunteered at local community centers, offered support to those in need, and fostered connections that would ripple outward in ways he couldn't fully comprehend. Each act was a testament to the lessons he had learned, about acceptance, humility, and the delicate balance of history. One evening, as Caleb sat in his study surrounded by books and artifacts from various eras, Lucia appeared before him, her presence as enigmatic as ever. "You've done well, Caleb," she said, her voice carrying a tone of approval. "You've embraced your role within the timeline." Caleb looked up, meeting her gaze with a sense of gratitude. "Thank you, Lucia. It wasn't easy, but I think I understand now." She nodded, a hint of a smile playing on her lips. "Remember, time is not a river to be diverted, but a path to be walked. Your actions, though small, have meaning. Continue to find your place within it. With that, Lucia faded from view, leaving Caleb to ponder her words. He felt a deep sense of purpose, knowing that his journey had not been in vain. The paradox of time was no longer a source of frustration but a guiding principle that shaped his actions and interactions. As the years passed, Caleb became a respected figure in his field, known not just for his historical knowledge but for his unique perspective on time and its intricacies. He authored several books that, while grounded in historical fact, hinted at a deeper understanding of the temporal fabric. Readers found his work both enlightening and comforting. Unaware of the true depth of his experiences, Caleb often revisited the memory of that pivotal day in Berlin, not with regret, but with a sense of fulfillment. He realized that his attempts to change history were not futile, but rather part of a larger narrative that he was always meant to be a part of. His actions had contributed to the resilience and spirit of the people, reinforcing the idea that even in the face of inevitable tragedy, humanity's capacity for kindness and compassion remained unshaken. One crisp autumn morning, as Caleb walked through a park adorned with vibrant foliage, he reflected on the themes that had defined his journey. Fate and free will, time paradoxes, and the intricate dance of history were no longer abstract concepts but lived experiences that had shaped his understanding of the world. He felt a profound connection to the past, present, and future, recognizing that each moment was a thread woven into the fabric of time. As he reached a quiet bench overlooking a serene pond, Caleb sat down, allowing himself a moment of contemplation. The gentle rustling of leaves and the soft ripples on the water's surface created a tranquil ambience, a stark contrast to the chaos he had once tried to control. He closed his eyes, taking a deep breath, and felt a sense of harmony settle within him. In that moment, Caleb understood that his journey was not about changing history but about embracing his place within it. He had learned that while the past was unchangeable, the present offered endless opportunities to make meaningful connections and impact the lives around him. His acceptance of fate had liberated him, allowing him to live fully in each moment without the burden of altering the past. As the sun set, casting a golden hue over the park, Caleb felt a sense of peace wash over him. He knew that the paradox of time would always be a part of his existence, but he was no longer burdened by the desire to control it. Instead, he chose to honor the flow of history by contributing his own small acts of kindness, understanding that these moments of connection were what truly mattered. Years later, Caleb's legacy endured not through grand historical shifts, but through the countless lives he had touched. His story became a quiet reminder that while the course of history is shaped by monumental events, it is the everyday acts of compassion and understanding that sustain the human spirit. In embracing his role within the timeline, Caleb had found his true purpose, leaving behind a legacy of empathy and resilience that would ripple through time long after he was gone. In the end, Caleb's journey was a testament to the power of acceptance and the beauty of living in harmony with the natural flow of time. He had navigated the complexities of the temporal paradox, not by altering the past, but by enriching the present. His story was a quiet affirmation that even in the face of inevitable destiny, the human spirit remains unbroken, finding meaning and purpose in each fleeting moment. And so, as Caleb walked through the twilight of his life, he did so with a heart full of gratitude and a mind at peace, knowing that he had played his part in the grand tapestry of time. His legacy was not one of grandiose changes, but of the simple, profound truth that sometimes, the most significant impact lies not in altering history, but in cherishing the moments that make it worth living. The end.